briefly, let's look a little further because we've got a couple more options here. We can do things to organize the sorting of this report. So like, let's say, for example, I wanted it to be sorted by the item description. I can do that. I can say I want it ascending. Go ahead and group them together. So this is just like in Excel. I also want them to be by the vendor name. So I'm going to scroll down through the list of different fields and say, okay, here's the vendor name. If you wouldn't mind adding that to my sort, and then the purchase order number. So for each of those vendors, I want to see those purchase order numbers. So this is going to sort the output as it appears, whether it's in Excel or if it's in Webquery, it doesn't matter. And you can add totals as well. So if we go down the line to the next of our options, we can say, well, every time we get to a different amount, go ahead and give me that total there underneath, a little subtotal or a grand total. So I could do it every time that there's a change in project number or something, I can do a subtotal. For this case, I'll just keep it at grand total. And you've got printing options where you can say, okay, I want a cover page with this. Oftentimes when you're just creating these reports for yourself or somebody else in your department, you're just going to run them out of Excel. You won't even need to look at the printing. And then finally, under options, you might remember, I can save this report now to my personal folder by default, or you can put it in other subfolders, so you can really organize how you've got this structured. I'm going to save this, and I'm just going to call it example, PO, projects, and then uninvoiced. Okay, and it doesn't have to be in all caps. I'm just typing that so that I can find it when I go to my personal folder, since I've got so many reports in there already. So again, it's going to verify, okay, this query's been saved. It resides in your personal folder. You've changed the name to whatever it is that you wanted it to. I could add a description underneath here. This is the default description that came with that query we modified. So I could go ahead and change it and say, this will be uninvoiced, or not uninvoiced, it'll be uninvoiced purchase orders. Excuse me. Okay, and then maybe on projects, just a little description. I can click save. It's going to save that change, and there we have it. So let's test this and see if it works, and I hope it does after I've gone through all of this. Remember, you can execute the query from here, or in the lower right-hand corner, you can execute it as well. And since this is not required, remember we left it as optional, I'm going to try to execute this new report for all projects. Since I don't have a particular project in mind, I want to leave it open. And just like in the first class, the output appears in a web query. You can see that we have 2,344 rows, and it displays rows from 1 through 9. Another thing that I didn't mention the first time is that you can change the number format. So for example, if I wanted to say, okay, display this to 2 levels, it'll put the commas in there and give me 2 decimal point levels. So you can alter that, make it a little bit easier to read. Now here we're going to go ahead and diverge from what we saw last time, and instead of viewing it in Excel, we're going to actually learn how to query this in Excel. And so this is another little advanced step that you're going to use quite a bit with this tool, because it'll enable you to run these reports and share them with other people without even having to go through the trouble of logging in through the web browser. So this is a really nice feature of Webquery. And if you click on options, you can see right here, I can query this in Excel, create the same exact query. So I'll get a little message here, and I want to click open, saying it's going to create the connection through Excel. And this is a security notice that you'll get within Excel. So it opens up an instance of Excel, and it's going to be notifying us that, okay, Excel, there's been a request to create a connection, ODBC link to this data source. Is that acceptable? You'll click enable. And here you're going to enter your credentials just like you did the first time when you logged into Webquery. And these are the same credentials again that you enter to log into Oracle. So it's all the same username and password. And if you want to, and I often do this, you can just click here to use those for future value, future reference. So you'll click that, click OK, you'll enter your password. So I'll just put my Oracle password in there. responsibility. Remember the name of your responsibility is EMR. Probably keep it in capital. If you press the space bar, you get this weird thing that you have to go back through, so don't do that. Global. And I want to save that for future references just like the other ones. Now remember, I ran it for all projects, so in this case I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to, and it'll prompt you here that you can enter a %, if you, a wildcard, remember, if I want to run it for all projects. Now I'm not going to use this for future references because I still want that option next time I run it. So click OK. And you can tell on the bottom left-hand corner here there is this spinning globe that indicates that this report is running, that there's still a connection. So if you're sitting there waiting for the output, because sometimes these reports can take a little while, if there's a lot of data to come back, and you don't see this globe spinning, then you know that something went wrong. Oftentimes you'll get a message up here on the top that says there was no output, or maybe you exceeded your I/O limitations because you made the query too all-encompassing. And what that means is that you need to go back into the query and make some adjustments, whether it is to add a filter. Sometimes you need to reduce the date ranges. Sometimes maybe you need to provide the operating unit name. So I think that, you know, all those things are good tips for you to try to get that data back that you need to try to reduce the size of your query. So remember that. And that's a very useful thing, you know, because a lot of us, when we're looking for information, we're looking for quite a bit of information from the system. So over time, you'll get used to how you can tweak this to make sure that you're getting back what you expect. And I think while we're waiting, this is a good time for me to, well, here comes the output, but this is a good time for me to mention that when you're using an EMR Noetix global responsibility, the output that you're going to be restricted to is the same output that you currently have access to within Oracle. And I'm going to restate this again probably in other classes, but the point of that is that you're not getting any new responsibilities from this. You're only going to be able to see that same detail that you had available to you. So we got the output from our report. We've got the project number. We've got each item description. We know what the vendor name is. We can see the purchase order number and all the other fields, some of them custom, some of them right out of the box that we're able to create. We can see what the uninvoiced amount is and total uninvoiced dollar amount. So now what you can do is you can treat this just like any other Excel file. So for example, I'll just click File, Save As, and maybe to my desktop, I can just save it, you know, as POs, you know, uninvoiced. And there we go. And if you ever want to refresh this, all you have to do is just go to your Data tab and click Refresh All, or you can hit Control-R, oops, and it'll start to prompt you again. So it's just going to run the report just like it did before. So if you're going to run this next month, you want to know, okay, what are my uninvoiced purchase orders by project now? It's going to run this query. You won't even need to log into Webquery. So I think that, you know, that's a very beneficial, and you can even share this with other people as well if you need to. So you can say, you know, when you need to update this detail, just open up this Excel spreadsheet and click Data Refresh, and it'll go out to Oracle and it'll return the detail that you need. So I think that's enough for now. It's been a little bit of a long lesson. We've covered a lot. Just as a reminder, we went in from scratch. We identified a view that we wanted to work with to get line level detail for purchase orders. And then we had a couple challenges in there where we had to talk about how are we going to create fields that don't already exist within this particular view. How are we going to load related views? And next time we'll talk about how we can join those together. If you need to look at fields that are in one and another at the same time, you can join them, and we'll talk about that. We learned how we can run these queries directly from Excel, and you can rerun them as well and share them with other people. So there's quite a bit there. And you learned how to go through each one of the masthead features and say, what is, you know, how do I apply filters? How do I apply parameters? How do I do sorting? And all of those different options that are available to you. So there's still a lot left to learn, but this is really a lot of the basics on how you can do this this tool, and it can be quite useful. So I hope you'll join me again next time, and I hope that you've learned something from this lesson. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you have, and I'll talk to you again soon.